Okay, hi everyone. Hi. What a wonderful looking room. Thank you so much for coming in today, for investing your time to come and learn here in Start Space. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. State Library Victoria acknowledges the traditional lands of all the Victorian Aboriginal clans and their cultural practices and knowledge systems. We recognise that our collections hold traditional cultural knowledge belonging to Indigenous communities in Victoria and around the country. We support communities to protect the integrity of this information gathered from their ancestors in the colonial period. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, who have handed down these systems of practice to each new generation for millennia. A few community reminders. I'm aware that we have a big session coming up, so Alim is obviously presenting, and then we'll have Q&As, but then we're also doing an exercise after the session, so you'll be welcome to stay back. There's a few papers on the table, and Alim will guide you through drafting your first brand story or refining your existing one. A few reminders. The Lisa Ring Celebration Breakfast is happening on the 30th of this month, which is about 2 weeks from now. So we've got some QR codes in the space. There's some QR codes on the front tables. If you haven't registered yet, please register. We'd love to have you in the room. It's going to be filled with just brilliant founders, innovators, people from the ecosystem. So definitely sign up to the Lisa Ring Celebration Breakfast. We're also announcing the scholars, the selected winners of the Lisa Ring Scholarship. On the 1st of November, the Saturday 1st of November, we also have the AI building session. So if you're keen to come in, ask questions, engage with AI experts, developers, engineers, but also AI curious individuals, end users, come in, ask your questions, state your challenges and understand what tools work best for you, or just work together to develop your own AI tools and products. So after the session, I'd like to invite everyone to also take a few minutes to fill the feedback form. So there's feedback forms on the tables, there's a QR code. Please give us your feedback on the session. And lastly, yes, I've already invited you to stay at the end of the session to draft your first brand story. So yeah, do not feel like you need to get up and go. You're welcome to stay back. Just network, connect with people, and develop your brand story with the support of Alim. But introducing Alim, Alim is a very familiar and friendly face in Start Space. With 20 plus years experience of brand strategy experience and people development across Asia-Pacific markets, Alim helps entrepreneurs build brands with clear, compelling foundations. Through Persay, he specializes in learning experience design that helps founders discover and express their genuine brand essence, particularly for service-based businesses where the line between personal and professional identity matters most. His philosophy is, the best brand stories are not manufactured, they're discovered. Here to help you understand and communicate yourself, your product, and your audience better, please help me welcome Alim.
Thank you, generous welcome that is. Hi, how are you? It's really good to be here, and thank you, Amir and Shireen, for the opportunity to be part of this session today. And I've sat in quite a number of lunch and learns as well since I joined Startspace earlier in the year, and I found it to be a nice, not just distraction from what I was doing, but also kind of like giving me a different perspective in terms of how others see it as we all learn together. And so the title of itself is the learning experience is something, as you heard Amir introduce, is something that is near and dear to me and the work that I do now, and so that's why I'm welcoming this opportunity. Before I begin, I'd just like to get a couple of questions, and if you don't mind, a show of hands, how many of you have built a brand or have experience in building brands? Okay, a number of you, yeah. And how many of you are even like a brand specialist or have a marketing experience? Quite a number of you as well, yeah, great. So this is a perspective that I would intend to share today from my own experience of building brands across. Primarily, I've been building brands in the FMCG world, so a lot of consumer goods marketing. So I started my career from studying brands as a market research executive in multinationals across Southeast Asia. So I'm originally from Indonesia, worked around Southeast Asia, and then about 10 years ago moved to Australia. From consumer research, then I went into branding, marketing roles in consumer goods, primarily with Unilever and then with another company here in Australia in the last few years before I decided to build Persay. So now, what you will be hearing today is sharing of a framework that I have found in the evolution of my work since I've decided to start building and putting together into practice what I was also passionate about throughout in people development in the coaching world. So about 10 years ago, I learned a different style of coaching or learning, which is around more ontological, so looking at the people from the whole of their self, from their body, mind, and also their emotions and moods. And that's where I found there's a lot of tension or struggles in the need around clarity when it comes to building a brand. And this is what I'm hoping to share with you today. Before I jump into that, so what Persay is the company that I've built to work with a lot of founders and entrepreneurs primarily right now, and a lot of them have come to me because they feel like whether they already have a brand or they're about to make a new brand or make their brands more compelling, they want to be more rooted in terms of how they feel confident in saying it themselves. Now, I'm not sure how many of you feel that way, but I've spoken to quite a number of you as well before, and there's some sort of similar experiences that we're all going through. And even myself, as someone who has experience building global brands and everything else, it's still a challenge sometimes to just put it into context, to just put it into some good content. Coaching, I find, is one way to help people in doing that, because as a coach, or coaches that you will deal with, they're trained to listen objectively. So whatever comes out of you, they can help you to decipher what's the pattern, what's the entity, what is underneath. And that's essentially the kind of work that we do. And every journey of the people that come into the work is different, and therefore it's a customized learning experience for everybody. After working and building brands for multinationals, I find that the working with startups and SMEs as building new brands and small brands is very refreshing, because I get to work with the people who have the ideas within. So one of the fundamental perspective here that I offer through the work that I do is that your brand is already in you, and that's the fact that why you are here as a startup. You already have an idea, there's already something within yourself that holds that identity. And that's the work to uncover. So it's not necessarily just about finding the brands from looking outside, but it's uncovering what's within. That's my approach. Now, to begin with, you might have gone through this situation where you go to a networking event, you hear someone introduce themselves. They're like, hi, my name is ABC and I work with this brand and everything else. And it starts to drone out. Like after 5 minutes, you nod politely and then you introduce yourself as well to them. And then each of you go apart your way. The moment that happens, then you don't really retain what that information is anymore. So there's a lot of missing pieces. It's not as memorable. Or you might be sitting down trying to write the about section of your website. And you've gone through 4 or 5 different scenarios. Just doesn't sit right, doesn't feel right. What you're experiencing and through through this journey that I found is that that's not a communication problem. That's actually a clarity problem. Because when you're clear about who you are, what you stand for, what you're serving, the foundations can become strong. And this is where a lot of the starting point of asking yourself is about what is the foundation of my brand. And that's why today we're going to spend some time talking about in more detail about what that brand foundation is. Just a heads up in case someone's expecting, this is not going to be about how you market yourself, promote yourself, but it's about looking in and uncovering that identity of yours as a brand or the brand that you're building. So when you're clear about who you are as a brand, the conversations that you have with many people and even across multiple different venues or types can feel more natural because you're speaking from the truth that's already in you. Decisions that you make as well as you evolve, and I know that having experienced, my company is only like about a year old, but I only got a strong sense of my own branding even earlier this year. And joining StartSpace as a member was helpful because I'm surrounded by people with the same energy, so with you guys as well. And because of that, it gets me to the practice of, yeah, it's okay. You don't have to know everything from the get-go. But at the same time, your core needs to remain consistent. And when you know what your core is, it helps to then evolve from there. People will remember you and communication will stay consistent throughout. A lot of the time that we start with, I look at, because of my experience, I started with more like in the product brand. So when I talk about product brand here, we're talking about some companies who produce a product and sell it to the end users, and the end users will use the product. So the brand becomes a story about that product or what that product offers to the person. So this is what I call in my term a product brand, because I differentiate this to a service brand. So there's a lot. How many of you here are in the space of more like using your consultant, or you're in management, you're in strategy, coaches, creatives? Yeah, there's a number of you. So I would call this becoming more like a service brand, because this is what you're offering is your expertise, is your experience, your talent. When we get to these distinctions, you can see like, okay, these are two different things. But at the same time, are they? Because at the end of the day, the end consumer is still a person behind it. So someone else is using your product. So when you're talking about a product brand, there's a person who you are addressing to, which we will then later on continue to look into this in more detail when it comes to about your audience, and we're talking about that. Now, it's not necessarily the case, but there are some service brands that name their company or their brand after themselves. Now, we even know some industries that's the best practice. So like, for example, in law, legal agencies, usually there will be like names of the people in the door as partners or managing directors of the place. But I also have encountered a lot of people who feel like that's not really sitting well with me. What if the brand is that really it? Like my brand, does it have to be me? Especially in the starting stage of your brand building. So this is a relevant question, because there's a lot of people who therefore figure, how do I navigate that through this? Is it really true? So this is where I then introduce, there's two different perspectives that you could choose to use, which is differentiating your personal identity to a professional identity of yourself. And when you start to make these distinctions, when you want to therefore build a brand, you have a choice. You can choose to link it directly with your personal identity, and therefore making it more closely to your name, whether that's your middle name or your last name or something related to you as a person, because you feel like that works well for the business that you're targeting. But there is an option for you who are not comfortable with this, and I find many people tend to come to then deciding that path as building a professional brand identity. So what you have on your LinkedIn, for example, does not need to necessarily be limited to the same information that you put in your personal social media. And that could be linked to more of your professional positioning as a person. And then you can take this further and build a brand that is linked to more of your professional identity. Why the distinctions matter? In my experience, it matters because there are questions that you want to consider. If you're still new and deciding what you want to call your brand or your business, then consider, do you wish to scale this later on? Are you going to have someone else be the front face of your company, of your brand? Keeping in mind that if you do, then if it's always going to be rooted to your personal identity, then you will have to take that into the consideration. How do you scale up to do that? And if it's only also related to you, then there are limitations when it comes to taking breaks or especially transition. Like you say, you feel like there's more opportunity if you expand, but you can't just take on all the clients and see them yourselves. So this is where a second important consideration is a matter. So a brand, therefore, that is linked with a professional identity can be created to tailor to its purpose, to its own purpose, and to grow and evolve. In a lot of the work that I do, this becomes a critical juncture when you do make a decision whether, okay, as particular service providers, do I see myself as the only one who will be doing this, or do I want to have this becomes ownable by other people? I want other people, the teams that I'm going to have, even though it's non-existent right now, because you're a company of one, will they be able to therefore feel like this is my company, not just the boss's company? I know that's a lot of questions to be had when you're still in the initial stage of your brand building, but it's worth to dive deep and probably take some time before you decide to invest, choosing a name, building a business entity, registering your whole administrations around it. Now, this comes to the key framework that I find helps me to navigate through a lot of the brand elements that comes into mind. So, as some of the brand marketing specialists here, I think you would probably be familiar, and especially if you've already started to do a search, whether you created your own brand or you had someone else do it for you. There are so many ways for people describe and build a brand identity. You have so many different components like the purpose, the vision, the mission, the insights, the reasons to believe. There's all sorts of different things. But I find that at the stage of building a brand or creating a brand, that can get, all of those noise and distractions can get too distracting. So I tend to try to find what is a simplified version of it. And one of the things that I come up with is just, if we focus it on three core things to begin with, then everything else helps. And this is why the foundation starts there. Who you are, this is your brand identity. We'll go into detail with each of these. Who you serve, as I said, whether you're a product brand or you're a service brand, you are serving someone. There is a person or an audience or a character that you are trying to answer or address the key needs. And then what you uniquely offer to them. So 3 building blocks that ultimately make up the key foundations of your brand. Let's look into the first one. So even if you're in the early stage of your brand building and you're not a brand specialist, technology today is really, really helpful, because a couple of rounds of conversations with ChatGPT or other LLMs that you use will be able to spit out, put your thoughts together and come up with what is the purpose, your mission, your vision, and persona. And the time that you spend to actually create this and build this is going to be worthwhile, especially if you want to use this for a brand and a business development. Where I talk about who you are in this context, in this frameworks, You can start with like, why are you doing this? What is your why? What change are you creating? And especially because you want it to be rooted to your personal interest in this, why does it matter for you? So those kind of questions are very important for you to know and to have that be clear for yourself. The vision. What does the world look like when you do become successful in delivering this work, this business, the product that you're selling? What are the long-term aspirations, the long-term goals? And then how are you going to achieve this? What is the practical approach? Like how do you create that change? All of these can relate to your original purpose, or maybe your mission is specifically for now, short term. Then you have a different one for medium term and long term. And last but not least, what's also important is you want to decide what is the energy that you're going to be bringing here. How do you want your brand to show up? Is it going to be more like an expert friend, or it's more like an educated consultant? What is the tone of voice? What is the kind of relationship that you want to be built? Is it going to be prescriptive? Is it going to be inviting? Key questions that will help you to figure out what is the persona that you want to build with this brand. The more natural you have it, the closer you are to making this be solid and real for you. For example, if this was a financial coach for creatives, the challenges that they build is like, okay, there's so many different dimensions. There's the finance, there's the coaching, then there's creative, there's so many different industries. So the purpose that they've articulated could be helping creatives build financial security without sacrificing their practice, with a mission of practical financial education tailored to irregular creative income. So these creatives have irregular incomes, and we want to address those. And the vision will be when this is successful is where the creative work and the financial stability aren't the opposing forces. So they feel like it's blended in. And in order for them to be successful, because most of the characters of a lot of the people who are rooted in finance education, they need to be able to work with creatives who are more flexible, more spontaneous, so a more understanding, pragmatic, and non-judgmental approach would be more successful for this. Now, that is a lot, I find. So I've actually recommended for a lot of people who are at the early stage, as a starting point, don't worry about all of that, because I feel daunted when I had to put down like, what is the vision? Like even that word alone was a bit daunting for me to like, what is the vision? It's kind of like so big, like so grand. But at the end of the day, come back to the question, what is the why? Why am I doing this? Why do I want this brand to exist? There's so many other people doing things, but why am I choosing to build something new? So that there is already something in there. And I'd like you to start trusting that instinct of yours, because that's gonna be really handy and helpful for you to go along the journey of brand building. What change are you creating? So that's the why. And then how do you want it to show up? So back to that energy feeling, like do I want to be positioned as a premium brand and therefore always expected to create to the top end of the segments, or do I want to make it be more approachable in my energy? So I would recommend for anyone still in the early stages, just focus on the two. Don't worry so much about what your purpose, vision, mission. You can craft and evolve that along the way, because that's usually the general process. And the rest will actually flow. So with our example earlier, the why is just helping the creatives build financial security without sacrificing their own practice. And then the how is, again, back to the understanding, pragmatic, non-judgmental. They want to learn how to speak the creative language. So this is probably an area where you decide, okay, with some learning space that I want to go. The second one, and what I have sort of like gotten through a lot of successful brand outcomes, is when you know the key insights of your audience. And I'm talking about differentiating insights from observations, and we'll go into more details about this, because what they say they want, the people that you're targeting on the surface, it's not necessarily what they genuinely need. There's so many different consumer goods company who roots themselves, and like, for example, Unilever invests a lot of the brand expertise on knowing who their target is. But understanding their needs is sort of like fundamental when you build that, because when you solve the insight, and the deeper the insight that you have there, that you have uncovered, the more relevance your brand is going to be. And this is important because that's where we want to not just go to the stated want. For example, I need more time. There's a lot of people who will come up with that sort of a need or an expression of the want. But upon further conversations with them, you ask more questions. What do you mean more time? Like, time to do what? Time where? Which part of your life? And then you might start to realize this, they're not necessarily saying that they need to have a better structure over time management. They couldn't say no to a lot of requests from their team or their boss, up or down, so they want to take it on themselves just because they thought that that's what expected of them. So it becomes more about a management of how do you build a practice of saying no or saying yes, either way. Or they probably need help in clarifying what priorities are, and some line managers would have this with people that they're dealing with, because then they know, okay, so what you need to know is which ones do you want to focus on now and later. I want more customers. Like, okay, is that really the underlying need? What is there underneath? I need better systems. What do you mean by better systems? Because some people will stop and, okay, so because we have a fixation on the product that we are developing, sometimes it's very easy for us to be lured into, they need better systems. This is a better system, but that's your interpretation. You want to first clarify, what do they mean by the better system? It's actually more about preventing burnout, it turns out, when you drill down to the deep level. So there's all sorts of different things that you can do. So I find there are three things that help me in this journey and the people that I've worked with. And this goes across a product brand or a service brand. So first thing is, the three steps are specific observations, so watching your audience closely. What do they actually do? And then you recognize a pattern of it. This means that you want to observe in more than one occasion, or get more than one source of data for the same audience. That's how you can figure out what the pattern is look like. Do they have the same one expressed multiple times? Who's telling them that this is what they need? What's driving this? And would it actually change the situation? You'll test it as well, like in yourself. The third part is where I ask you to start building trust on your instincts, is this empathy and intuition that you have. Because even though sometimes they describe a number of things, sometimes you just hear it and feel like, that doesn't gel right. I don't know, there's something off about this. And this is where your empathy and your intuition kicks in. And based on your experience, because remember that you have the idea in the first place, this business is your creation. This brand is your baby. You know it well. So there's some things that are inside of you. So information is one. Insights and instincts. These are the three key things. I'd like to probably give an example, and we won't be able to do in full flesh here throughout all of this, but one of the example that I can share with you, turning information into insights, is one of the fundamental starting point for a lot of brands to then soar. 10 years ago, when I transferred to Sydney, one of my earlier job as the brand marketing it was a food service division of Unilever, where the company produces products that are used by the chefs all across different types of establishments in here. And one of the main problems was that we had a decline in our gravy sauce as a base sauce product. The challenges in the decline were also linked to gluten-free. 10 years ago, this was the beginning of people starting to order food and when they come to a restaurant, can I see the gluten-free menu? And for the chefs who we are catering to, this becomes a challenge. So what I was first told in the early time of the observation was that they want help in navigating through a lot of the dietitians and nutritional requirements of gluten-free. How do I develop gluten-free menus? They want assurance. That's another Express wants and information that the products that they're using addresses to professionally what is in the standards of the celiac associations, for example, or endorsed by it. And then they also want it to be cheap, as many of you who develop products for multiple companies, that there's so many different layers of competition. So what happened was that we were not performing because our main competitor had the endorsements. They were the ones linked with the whole celiac associations and everything else. And the struggle to continue to produce something that meets the strict regulatories is like real in the product development. Now, when we started to ask more questions and we looked at, this is one of the key things, like we actually started to observe, where do you put your stuff? Where do you put your product that you make the gluten-free base sauce from, where you don't, and everything else. And it was very quick for us to realize that, okay, what they said that they want is not necessarily what they need. Because we came down to an express needs that goes something along the line of like, I want simplification, because there's already so many things going on in my kitchen as a chef. There are operational tasks, and I always have to be ready for spontaneous different things that are happening in my kitchen. I don't have time to always have so many different layers of procedures. So what they want was clearly a simplification. And then they also have another observation that we found is they have a perception already, and which is true at the time, most of the products that offer gluten-free was inferior in terms of taste. And as a chef, that was embarrassing, because to them, they don't want to cook something that will come out tasting awful, because at the time, the development was always about meeting the regulatory needs. So the chef, therefore, has to work double the effort to make that taste better, putting in all sorts of things which cost more, and they eventually lose profit. So instead of, therefore, heading on and going through the routes of the nutritional elements and dietitian's approval, then we chose that, okay, what if we solved all that problem? Let's just build a product that tastes great and gluten-free. So because originally the approach had been to remove all of the elements, ingredients of a product that had gluten in it and replace it with something else. But we attacked it a different way. Let's just approach it a completely different way and start from scratch, build the recipe again. What would a great tasting gravy feel like, taste like, and create it from if it's all gluten-free? And so that's how it came about. And now, at that time, probably 2 to 5% of the category or the product range was gluten-free, quickly shifted because the chefs then replaced all of their gravy with just the one. So that saves space in what they need, and also they don't have to worry about taste because the number one brief to the product was developing taste, good taste first. Now, 10 years after this, 10 years on, most of the products are already gluten-free, but they don't even think about it that way. We made gluten-free become the back of their mind. Yeah, everything is always gluten-free now, what we produce it. So, likelihood, if you're a fan of steak nights like I am from some of the local pubs, you're probably having it with a gravy-based sauce that's gluten-free. Not necessarily, and you don't know it because that's been changing. That's driven a lot of the sales for the company since then. What helped was the combination of the three, because when you have all sorts of data, when you look at your audience and trying to decipher what they need, it's the instinct that I find is the third most important element. You can have so many hypotheses in terms of what do they actually need, but it's your experience. You look at it, figure it out, and don't be satisfied with just the one look, but look into and ask for different sources of data until you find, okay, that feels right. And this is that gut check that you have. Okay, out of all of this, I think that one's makes the bill. And that is where I find a lot of the competitive advantages when you know what your brand answers to, when you're clear about the need of the audience or the person that you're targeting. That sets you apart from a lot of other people who are just stating things or who are reacting and responding to something that people address. So a small framework, if you've got a pen or paper that you have right now, if you want to start scribbling down, you can, but we'll also have the presentation slides available anyway. For you to practice around building this insight for your audience, for example, and a kind of phrase or statement like insert the kind of people that you serve with what kind of need that they have. Then you state what offers, what do you do to it put in your unique approach so that what is the outcome that they can gain. Some simple frameworks. For example, if we go back to our earlier example, for the creative professionals, this is the who you serve, who their need is they have irregular income. What is the offer? The offer is a financial coaching through methods designed for non-linear earning. So that's the unique approach that they're positioning themselves with. So that, come back to your audience, what can they expect to gain? They can build sustainable security without abandoning their practice. So it addresses the need, tackles your approach and outcome. And the more you practice and look at different scenarios, I find that, of course, it helps, especially as you're trying to talk to different types of people and different groups of people. The more consistent you are, knowing this helps with that. And then this is where you put everything together as the third step. So who you are, who you serve, and then what you uniquely offer as a brand. So when you have sort of like nailed down to that core need, put it together with your approach, who you are as a brand, your why, and your how before. That leads to then what is the outcome that your target actually expected. These three components helps to therefore form the basis of that foundation story that we spoke about earlier, because you're offering something that addresses the person. Again, back on the sides, I find that when you have a clear view of the person, what they need, the core need, and the further down it is in the need into like a base human truth, like for example, that chef story, I want simplification. Don't we all want that? Like there's a lot of people beyond the industry of chef who want that. But there is something unique for that. What kind of simplification? Meaning, I don't want too many things in my pantry, for example, in that case. And what is it for your audience? What is their truth? What is the need within? Again, the closer it is to the base of human truth, the more universal it becomes, and the bigger chance that your brand can deliver against it. So the brand foundation story, and you have some worksheets there that guides you through. I have a few questions that I've put together to help you craft this. But essentially, your brand foundation story starts with, for example, my brand exists to present your why, 4, put in your who you serve, so the type of audience that you're targeting. Because of your understanding, we understand that this is what they need. And then this is what we offer. And through a particular approach that you coin as yourself, your unique approach, so that the transformation that they experience. This becomes like a starting point or a draft. Now, for some of you who are already established brands and everything else, that this is probably a bit too basic for your development, and that's totally fine, because this is a chance for you to relook at, do you still remember what it is? Because what I find with a lot of ventures who are developing their brands, it can sometimes grow, and now you seem to be addressing a different need than when you first started, when you built the brand. So a sense check to write this down again always helps to, like, have I gone too far away from my original idea that I started this? Or am I still there? Helps for you to then link that up. And I find that, like, with the startup world, being in startup space here there's always something changing every week even, and new ideas, new emerge opportunities, and this helps to do that. So for example, for Persay, for the current iteration, exists to help founders either connect or reconnect, whether you're building something new or just something established, for example, with genuine essence or the inner essence and natural creativity in business. Because I believe, as I said, especially with founders, you have the brand in you. That identity is already there. It's really about, talk about it, put it out there so that it comes out. Yes, you can shape it around to make it look as what a brand should look like in your view. We understand that sustainable success requires integrating who you are personally and professionally. You don't have to choose you don't have to sacrifice one over the other. But having a clear distinction, knowing what is your personal identity, what is your professional identity, and therefore what is the brand that you want to choose. A lot of times people ask me as well, then what should my brand be named after that if it's not my own? Well, look at your purpose, look at your vision. Is there a name that you can creatively come up that links to that? Because then people know exactly what kind of world out there that you want, what kind of results you want to impact. We offer learning experiences through coaching and consulting so that founders can build thriving businesses without sacrificing who they are. The exercise worksheets is there in front of you, and the more you practice, I find that then you can look into applying this into all sorts of different channels, whether that's your websites, your networking introductions, email signature. The more consistent you make it, and the simpler you have it, the more strong your brand identity will become. And the wording needs to adapt to the context, but the core is stay consistent. 3 things that I'd like to leave behind, as this is my final point, is when you do take this forward, and I'm speaking to, I'm not sure if there are entrepreneurs here who are already more further along in the journey, but if we're talking about Start Space and startups community that we're building, that you are where you need to be. And this is one of the things that I've learned as I coach people, particularly, there's a lot of overwhelmed feeling, like a lot of nervousness when it comes to, I'm so far behind. You're exactly where you need to be. It's okay to be where you are and just address it and acknowledge it and ground yourself to it. Uncover what's already within. If you feel like you have a lot of information data swirling around, just look within yourself. What's in there? Why did you want to build this in the first place? Because that's the strong root of all of this. And then know that this is your story. So therefore, it's yours to rewrite. You can adjust, you can change it, and also evolve along the way. So what you decide your brand is today can be different 3 months from now. And that's okay, because it's your journey. But it would help to therefore find that deeper connection to the core early on, so you don't choose a name that you have to re-register yourself again, because that's a whole part of a whole complexity with ASICs that we all don't need. Those are the 3 things that I'd like to leave you with. And if you have any questions, happy to take any. I see Alim trying to.
Okay, please help me give it up to Alim. Thank you very much. That was super insightful, very structured, very guiding. We'll open it up to audience questions, feedback, thoughts. Who would like to go first? Yeah.
Firstly, thanks so much for your presentation. I appreciated the way you delivered information in a very concise manner.
Thank you.
And my question is, I don't know if you can help, but how does someone sustain motivation? Because I find some days I'm super motivated, other days I can barely get started.
Yeah.
Which is probably common for a few people.
Yeah. How many of you feel that way as well?
Me, running low on energy, I want to get my company started, but then it's just taking so much work.
Yeah.
It's just body's just not cooperating just because of us being humans, not robots.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful we're human, not robots.
Yeah. I find that that's something that resonates well with a lot of people, and the fundamental practices that I put in to do this is that deciding to first and foremost find what gives you joy, and doing that helps, because then the motivation comes from I am doing what I like to do. It's not necessarily just about fulfilling a particular grand purpose, but do I like what I'm doing? So maybe one of the questions that you want to ask yourself is around, do I still enjoy doing this, or is there something else that I find joy in? I named my company Persay is because it's about being connected to your state of being of play. Because when you're in the play state, then you have more creativity and access to lightness that then helps you to go along. People just speak from creatively differently when they connect to their play, versus when they're more in terms of like resolute, like chasing a target. There's not a lot of motivations around that, because you are after creating a result. So connecting to that side of you helps, and then talking to people, because there's a lot of hands that went up that share your experience, because and I find that spaces like this help because you talk to it and get a coach. Not to just plug, I've got a few fellow coach in the room as well who can testify that talking to someone, not necessarily like finding what's wrong with me, but it's about how do I build this further with what I've already got, and how work with the coach helps you to do that.
Thank you. Okay. I would also suggest that you check out, so last month we had the Members Breakfast with Cindy Rayat, who is a productivity and joy coach. And she did an info session during the Members Breakfast about productivity, joy, and self-leadership. So the recording of that session is on our YouTube channel if you'd like to check it out. Yeah. Yes, and she's got a book in the room, so definitely check it out. Her name is Cindy Rayat. Any other questions, please? Yeah.
Hey, Alim, that was awesome. Thank you. My question's just the distinction of like personal brand and professional brand, which I myself am having a lot of conversations about. I wanted to sort of, and I can use myself as an example, like in a professional business sort of brand, I really struggle with the purpose piece, but in a personal brand, I feel like I'm quite clear. Do you feel like both the professional and the personal needs to have that purpose and why we exist? What's your, or can it be one or the other?
Yeah. Well, my perspective on that, Kyle, right?
Yep.
Thanks, Kyle. So my perspective on that, because let me dial back a little bit. So as a person, for example, I may choose certain things that I communicate, which I wouldn't do as a brand, and vice versa. It's because to me, when I look at a brand, when I think about a brand, and I link more professional identity as the link to the brand, is there because you have a certain outcome that you want to generate. The person doesn't necessarily need to have an outcome. As a person, I'm living and breathing, I'm learning, I'm changing, I sometimes have good days, sometimes have bad days. So I spend less of my time trying to figure out the personal identity, just because it gets overwhelming when I have to, therefore, what is the distinction between the two? So when I put that aside, okay, I know who I am, I know what I like, and that's who I am and what I like. But then what do I want to impact in the world? So yeah, the word purpose was daunting on me every time I write stuff. So I just go like, why? Or what impact do I want to change? So I simplify to find those key nuggets. And then I link it, okay, it's because I want to have more people, and are you okay if I just share?
Yeah.
Okay. More people to know about the podcast business that I'm running, and therefore there is a particular outcome, revenue, that I want to do. So what would be therefore the professional identity that I create that would attract that? People don't need to know who I am necessarily linked to that or not. They just need to be aligned when you do make the connections as you introduce yourself. So myself and my company's identity, I'm always trying to make it distinct, because in Play Persay, it's always about the learning, creativity, lightness, playfulness, but not necessarily who I am. I'm probably even like structured, kind of boring at times and all that kind of thing. So, does that help?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Question in the back.
Thanks. I'm Adam. Hi.
Hi.
And thank you. I feel a bit of a tension when I'm trying to figure out the positioning of my brand between, on the one hand, wanting to define it clearly enough and with enough focus that people can clearly see that, you know, I'm the person they want for a particular thing.
Yeah.
Right? So being focused enough. Whilst on the other hand, not wanting to define it so tightly that you maybe miss out on conversations because people think, oh, that's not quite what I'm looking for. How do you balance those ideas when you're getting that positioning?
Yeah, good question. Yes, and that's a real struggle. Question to you though, how have you reached out and gotten feedback that said that they find it inconsistent to you with the brand that you develop?
No, I guess I'm in the process of figuring it out. And it's almost, for me, I've got purpose and partnerships as being things that spaces I'm working in. Yeah. And I'm just kind of like, can I be both? Will I only then speak to people who want to do purpose-driven partnerships? And so I'm like, can I define myself broadly enough? Or do I need to kind of really choose? Got it. So a couple of things that I could probably share and suggest would be to ask some people, first and foremost, with the portrayals that you're trying to design. And I would not be, especially if you have room to still explore and refine, then put a few different positioning concepts together and then test it out by communicating with people. Now, some people, the people that I would recommend that you talk to, you'd like to have them to be someone who understands you beyond what you say, right?
Because when you start to say something that they see you light up and you're clear, that you're confident, they can feel it through. And this is why the coaching is looking at your body posture. Everything will be aligned, your body, your mind, and what you communicate. And you will want to hear that yourself, because the more you talk about it, then you know, okay, this one it has more depth than when I position myself at this. And that's one test case that I would probably start with to begin with. But the second suggestion is probably keeping it simple. When you make it as simple first, especially if you feel unsure, keep it to the core few. So don't go too broad first, just the simple frameworks, practice that, reiterate that, and everything else. And that becomes your starting point. And then you listen, again, back to that information, observe what comes out of this. Do people react more when I say concept A or concept B? And vice versa, and then you get your insight. Does that help?
Yeah, that's good, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good test case for the draft template that you provided. So if you kind of want to put it through that document, you might get a bit more clarity. Annie?
Yes. Oh, like that. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
That's great. So my question to you is, just given your expertise and experience and all, what's the best strategy you can recommend us to retain everything you've learned in life? I'm finding that memory loss and memory blanks, it's just coming to me such that it is just hindering my growth in some kind of sense. I've learned it, I want to remember it, but just because of time and us being so busy evolving, it's very difficult and challenging to retain everything we've learned. I'm so shocked and just so surprised to see some people in the community that can memorize everything in their life so well.
Yeah.
Photographic memory. I know I can be a bit like that, but
Got it.
100% of the time, how is that possible?
Yeah, so you want to understand what memory retain and how do I better retain my memory
Strategically.
Yeah. Okay.
Short term, long term, I'm open to it. So I'd love to hear from you.
Great, yeah.
Thank you.
That is a question that I would like to ask myself as well. But for example, some of the techniques, of course, and you, so many different experts here probably have experienced different things. But for example, throughout these presentations, what helps me is I can't retain all of the memory that what I plan to write now. So I made the structure of the presentations allows me to help recall those memories. So practicing, putting it into structures, and I know as humans we have limitations. We get distracted. There's so many noise and data information that we receive every minute. Just open up your phone, feeds will come in like fast. That's a lot of things that can distract you. So finding what is working for yourself is probably the best first step, because those are things that I would do to myself. So how I retain memory will be different than how you are.
How can you even work it out? Because you don't even know. You're like so.
I think we can probably explore this question. So if anyone resonates with Annie's question, please, you're welcome to come up and have a conversation after the session.
Oh yes, we can have a little focus group.
Great.
Yeah, we'll take one or two more questions, please. Yep.
Let us know.
Hey guys. Hey Alim, thanks for that presentation. It was really useful.
Pleasure.
I just wanted to ask around the piece of finding out your audience a bit better.
Yeah.
Like in all your years of sort of doing this with corporates and SMEs and startups and whatnot, or I should frame it a different way. It's really easy to project what you think the problem is, or what the problem or need of your audience is.
Yeah.
Have you found a pattern let's just say a pattern in the brands who have done that successfully versus the ones who haven't?
To successfully identify their core target, is that what you're?
Yes, and avoid defining the problem based off their limited, tunnel vision. If you get what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I do. This is more related to how do you get down to that insight level, not just information level. Yeah. Thank you. What was your name? Ahmad, yeah. And I think that there's a lot of consistencies and similarities throughout the experiences when we're talking about digging down to that core insight. Now, if your question also has an element of what is the shortcut, then there's not a lot, because it's usually about trial and error, because you want to start with positioning yourself or focusing on one, then go through in the FMCG world that I'm used to and the branding creation that I did, there's a whole series of stages that you go through, from ideas to then testing out your insight, and you actually do test it in all sorts of different simulations to know which one sticks and which one yielded the consumption response that you want. So doing those kind of testing, or trial and error, as I call it, and then identifying which one is closer or yields the biggest return for the approach that you've taken, then you chase that. And usually when you see that there's a big revenue, okay, that's coming from there. Then you want to go down deeper. Okay, why is that? And so you don't necessarily have to go down the level of why in the very early stage until the person's character is more shaped, and you know, like, okay, they responded to that stimulus that I gave them. Do you see? Are you following me? I know you.
Yeah, so it's not a million questions.
No.
It's seeing what gives.
So when you narrow it down to that one, or out of the top 3, 4, then you go down, okay, let's go deeper then. Let's observe what they're like. That helps to save a lot of iterations and time, I find, because you already have a proven case.
Yeah.
In that area. And then you go further in the process.
That's really useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Alim. Was it Adam? Adam, just reflecting on Adam's question, interested in your thoughts on that. So, the degree to which you aligned your brand and your value proposition to a problem that you're solving, if that maybe isn't resonating, to what extent do you see that as a problem solution, product market fit disconnect, or a brand problem itself?
When we talk, okay, thank you. So I think that, so when you're referring to here is when we link the brand's identity to the problem that we're solving. And how is that?
Correct. And if that doesn't resonate, or people think it's too narrow or too broad or misunderstood, is that a problem solution fit to a product market fit disconnect?
It could be both, I find. But one of the things that I coach people, or when I'm going through this mindset of therefore finding out what is the strongest brand identity that will come out, is rather than focus on the problem, is then more on the solution rather than the issue itself, and also the alignment of the why, whether that's the purpose or the vision or the mission. And that usually helps me to anchor it. So one of the key things that I generally start with is, let's find what the anchor is. For some, it is more about the problem solution that you're talking about, because then people will associate the name of that brand to the solution that's been offered. But a lot of times also it's mainly about what do they represent, the stand. That's why that's more of the purpose vision. So that's why I think it can be both, in my opinion. Thank you.
I've got a quick follow-up question on that, because I think that's such a good point. Are there ways to kind of establish the right metrics to measure when you're kind of doing that trial and error for your branding? Something that, really, metrics for specifically your branding, what you're communicating, that kind of separates it from the business itself.
Yes, I think there's a lot of performance indicators that you can always attach to what your successful brand outcome is, but then that links more to your business goals and business targets, business objectives, because the outcomes what you set yourself against would be more linked to, I think that's related more to Hamid's question as well, like what is the outcome that I expect, and how is this brand, and in answering the needs and getting the awareness, getting people to start even considering the brand for the products that they want to choose. There's a whole funnel of KPIs along the way, from awareness to purchase. So there's like intent to purchase, considerations, and so on and so forth. So we can, as a business and a brand, then you can build metrics for each stage of the way.
Okay, thank you. We'll take one more question before we wrap up the official session. Any last questions? Yep.
I can ask a quick
Yeah,
question.
go.
Hello, my name is Inetta. I'm in the social media space and I have built a small business platform for small business owners. And
Okay.
I get really confused. I don't actually want to share myself a lot on
Yeah.
on my business page, but
Yeah.
I find that it resonates with my audience more and
Yeah.
gets me more followings and more traction. Is that damaging to me in the long term when I want to eject myself? Is there such a thing as a strategy for that sort of thing? Or do I just go for it now and build it and then just somehow eject myself?
Yeah, you're at that stage where you don't really know yet which path to go. Yeah, yeah. I also resonate with yourself. Like if you go into my LinkedIn and my website, there's nothing so much about me myself as well. I would probably recommend you to ask yourselves first, like, why do you feel that you need to put yourself in there? Because what is the basis of that? And when you start to making those answers that might come up become objective, then it gives you a more firm ground in terms of deciding, like, is it really necessary? Because are you getting the work that you're doing the way that you are now? If it's not, then okay, is that one of the blockages? And therefore, maybe it is a consideration for you to do that. Or do you need to make sure that your personal identity that you present outside is true or always is your personal, or maybe what you're trying to create is a professional identity, as I said. So you can have your brand, and then you can build a professional identity that is linked to the brand, and this is what you might choose to communicate. So I find with a lot of people who are uncomfortable to sharing private, personal stuff to living to work, then when you start to say, okay, who am I as a professional identity? Now, we're all experienced in building a professional identity. Like I understand, like even someone as a mom, there is a mom who is a professional because there's a mom voice. They will have, when you take on a role of a mom, then you say certain things and you don't say certain things. This is what, as simple as that, as I imagine to create a professional identity. It doesn't have to be needing what sort of, therefore, experiences and list of historic resume that I put against it. But what is the components of who am I when I am a social media entrepreneur? What sort of information that I want to put out there instead? Does that help?
Yeah, I think going back to the question why would probably, that's a place to start.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Help me give it up to Alim one more time.